level 4 and the ADA was to ensure access. In the Office of Student Access and Wellness, we want to ensure our students have access to what they need in order to be successful in the classroom. When working with students with disabilities, it is important to understand the difference between equality and equity. Here is a picture that demonstrates that concept quite well. On the left-hand side, you have equality, depicting each of the spectators being given a crate to view the game. However, the experience is still not the same. Equity is providing access and resources so all can enjoy the same experience. However, it can be argued that this form of equity is putting a Band-Aid on the problem. This next picture is similar to the first, but now you can see there is a third option, and that is removing the wooden fence and replacing it with a chain link fence. This represents addressing the systemic barriers that causes the need for equity. And this is our goal and where our heart lies in access and wellness.
So I challenge you to think about, what does access mean to you? Not only in the lens of students with disabilities, but supporting students in general. So instead of hard copy and e-text accommodations, the boxes, right? Just like we addressed, we could integrate universal design and equity, the chain link fence. An example of this is Constellation digital materials. And then also allowing for reduced cost print on demand feature. This would remove the barriers not only for students that need accommodations, but for all students and all students' academic needs.
So why do students choose to pursue their education online? For students with disabilities, online learning provides a modality in which they can address both their educational and disability needs. Our office supports students from disabilities ranging from cognitive, learning disabilities, mental health concerns such as bipolar, ADHD, OCD, and schizophrenia. There's also traumatic brain injuries and ongoing and chronic medical concerns. Oftentimes, students have frequent doctor's appointments, unpredictable flare-ups, and medication side effects that prevents them from attending a brick and mortar campus. And online learning addresses these needs. It is important when working with students with disabilities, we do not use our own personal academic experience as the frame point for normality, and being aware of the biases we might hold.
I just wanted to do a brief overview of the process for requesting accommodations in our office. It is a student-driven process. So what that means is the student does submit an accommodation request form. That starts the process in order for us to support the student with accommodations. Once they submit an accommodation request form, they are linked up with an Access and Wellness counselor to support them. That Access and Wellness counselor does perform a comprehensive structured interview where they go over the specifics in terms of the impact of the student's experience, specifically as it relates to the online learning environment. Following that conversation, sometimes third-party documentation is also applicable. Lastly, we send a draft to the student for them to review. They sign and date that draft and send it back. Electronic signatures are absolutely sufficient through our office. And then we go ahead and authorize that accommodation. We discuss the implementation of the accommodations and the expectations of the student. They're valid for 1 year, and then we connect with the student on a yearly basis to discuss the impact that they experience as it relates specifically, again, to the environment, and see if those accommodations need to be altered in any way, and then we update them for the following calendar year. At that time, it is the student's responsibility to send their accommodation form to their instructor. Again, being a student-driven process, starting with the accommodation request form and ending with them submitting their accommodation form to their instructor.
As previously mentioned, the structured interview students engage in allow access and wellness counselors to recommend accommodations for students. Accommodations range from extended time on assignments, quizzes and tests, course materials in accessible formats, alternate assignments and course substitutions, advocacy, and community referrals. This is not an exhaustive list, though these are some of our most used and requested accommodations in our office.
So I just want to go back to the faculty implementation and support. Again, the students go ahead and provide that accommodation form to the instructor. It is their responsibility. The accommodation form is provided once at the start of the course, and the accommodations are not retroactive. So it is important that the student's providing that to you at the start of that course. We do want to be partners with you as faculty and want to know that we're here to support you and our students. I do get a lot of questions and concerns from faculty, and I'm very open to support them. So if you have questions, feel free to connect with me or Victoria or anyone else in our office. We really do appreciate any type of feedback or information you have. Since they're updated yearly, I just want to address a few questions that come to our office before we open the platform for more questions. The biggest question I receive is, okay, I'm in the middle of a course and my accommodations are up. What happens next? Well, we connect with the student, update them for the following calendar year, but even if it's in the middle of a course, please don't worry. Oftentimes those accommodations are the same, if not similar to the accommodations the student previously had. Sometimes there's temporary accommodations, but it is very rare. So most of the time that student, if you see that it's a yearly accommodation, it is going to be updated again from our office. So there is no need to worry. Again, another email that we receive quite often in our office is just asking about accommodations and if they're valid. I know that some of the language, it says student signature on file, that is very purposeful. We have the original documented in Campus View, so again, no need to worry. And in my 8 years of working here, not one time, I can tell you, not one time have I received that email and it's not been valid. So just so you know, that doesn't happen often. So now we'd like to open the floor. We provided our contact information here, like we were saying. Victoria and I are definitely open to questions. There is a counselor that's usually on the form as well. That counselor may have changed. No need to worry about that either. You can always direct questions to extension 20050 or Victoria and I or the rest of the counselors here at Ashford. We're very open to connecting with you. So we have some time and I'd like to open the floor to some questions and conversation. We did want to create space for that and ensure that we can be a support to you.
So thank you so much, Shayla and Victoria. Just while everyone's getting their questions ready, I did have a quick couple questions because I do work with faculty and I think that it's an important role that you play. I know that you stated that you wanted to be partners with faculty, and I was wondering if you could maybe speak to the benefits that you see not only for students in the class, but also for faculty members that are working with those students.
Yeah, we definitely want to be partners with our instructors and faculty here at Ashford. And that is even if it's, working on one-off situations in terms of student situations. We really like to be able to have a conversation with, what is the need that the student is needing that's beyond what they've been approved for per their accommodations, and what type of solution can we come together and make so that way we're still being able to meet the student's need and help them to continue to be successful in those courses. So, we definitely welcome, conversations where we can collaborate and come to solutions that best support our students.
Yeah, we recognize too, it's not a one size fits all, with accommodations specifically, there are a lot of general accommodations we support students with, but I can tell you that most of the time the conversations that we're having are beyond the accommodations. It's about, making that student whole. And that's why we want to partner with our faculty in order to help that student and make that student whole, whether it's supporting them with accommodations or other resources that might be available here at Ashford. we link up with career services often and find resources that are available in different avenues here at Ashford to support our students.
So we have a question in the chat from Catherine Myers, and she's asking, I often have instructors ask if an incomplete is automatically granted for a student with an accommodation. Can you please speak to the student and instructor responsibility when it comes to the incomplete form?
I first want to just say I appreciate that question, and I'm glad you asked it because that is a question we receive quite often. Incomplete is not automatic. Never is it automatic for any student. They do have criteria in which they need to meet just like all students. So the student does need to be passing and have completed up to week 4 usually of the course in order for that incomplete to be granted. If they're meeting the criteria, then absolutely, it should definitely be granted. But they must meet that criteria just like any other student to support them with that accommodation.
Yeah, and the pre-authorized for the incomplete allows them to, if they're meeting that criteria, to be able to request the incomplete without having to provide additional explanation or documentation to warrant justification for that incomplete. So that's what it means when our students are pre-authorized for an incomplete, should they be meeting those criteria. Just something also to note that was recently added to the incomplete criteria, I think maybe this late summer, was that the student also has to be an active participant through the duration of the course. So that means, if a student was active, week 1 and 2, but then kind of dropped out up until the rest of the course, they technically wouldn't be meeting the criteria for incomplete. Again, there's discretion all instructors have in regards to working with the student on late work and what they want to do to help them to be eligible for incomplete, but just some things to also consider.
Yeah, and there's times in which hospitalization, things like that take place that might make a lapse in terms of their participation in class, and those are things to also consider, and that's where we can team up again with faculty to really work through what's going on for that individual student.
Another question in the chat is from Ashley Belha. What are some of the most unique accommodations provided to students?
Wow. The one that comes to mind?
Go ahead.
No, I'm trying to think of one that comes to mind. We've had quite a few unique accommodations, and I'm just trying to think of a good example. Oh man. I think one of them, it doesn't happen often, but double time is an accommodation that does come to mind. And I think of a student that I worked with for, I want to say it was close to 5 years, because I actually had the opportunity to work with her when I was working at University of the Rockies. And then when I transitioned here to the Office of Student Access and Wellness, worked with her as well here. And she had both limitations in terms of typing as well as her vision. And so she had someone who came in to help to scribe and type for her, and also help to interpret everything that she ever wrote down within the class. Now, that double time accommodation for many students, if they have it, I think this is a perfect example of when they need the full double time. She needed that full double time each assignment, but I can tell you that she was a straight A student. She was the best student, and one of the best students I've ever worked with, because she used every minute of her accommodations, but always submitted superior work because she just needed that support. I talked to her probably more than any other student. She always sent me a picture at the end of every class, letting me know she was so excited to get through another. But she continued on to multiple programs, and that was exciting to see. Really about leveling that playing field. It's not about providing an advantage. And I think that that's something that's the language we use often is we're leveling the playing field for students, ensuring that students have access, ensuring that they have the rights to earn their education, just like everybody else has a right to earn their education. I know that we hold our own biases, and I even hold my own biases, let's be real, but it is important that we don't understand every single situation and how every single student is impacted unless we've heard that story. And yeah, are people going to take advantage of things in life? For sure, but that's in every avenue of life. Why don't we make it easier and less difficult for our students in order to obtain their degrees by honoring them, by honoring their accommodations, honoring them as a person, honoring them as a student that needs support? And I'll get off my soapbox.
And I think it kind of goes back to my earlier comment in the presentation about not using our own personal experience of what we had to endure when we were, pursuing our academic achievements as, the frame point of what other students should be able to also do. So oftentimes, I'll hear of, not to call anyone out, but just a faculty putting like, well, I'm a full believer of online learning. I also went to pursue my degrees online, but I also worked full time and I had a family and I was able to meet all of my, academic, obligations. So no excuses. If I can do it, you can do it too. And that type of sentiment, although it's meant to be kind of encouraging and showing how, through perseverance, you can achieve, your degree through hard work. It's also language that's also very delimitating for a lot of our students with disabilities because, they hear that type of content and then it makes them feel less than or wonder, well, if I can't do that. And I have all those same stressors in my life, but I also have these extra stressors through my disability that makes it really difficult to just persevere in the normal sense of the word. So I think that comes into being really conscious of the language that we use in the classroom when we are encouraging our students. So we have probably time for one more question, and there's one in the chat from Stephen Carter. I advise posting to discussions first, then post assignments. The discussions are time sensitive to participation and late posting missed that participation, yes or no? Yes, I think that's definitely really good feedback. We want our students to be active participants in the classroom, which is also why we don't provide extra time in the forum for responses to their classmates, because we want them to still be able to engage in that conversation. And once the week ends, realistically, students aren't going backwards to look at postings that classmates may have posted later. So if a student is, if you're working with a student, on late work, yes, we definitely encourage, doing the discussions first and then, and then the assignments.
Yeah, and we do encourage students, if they can be timely, to do that. That is part of every single conversation with the student, is if, you have the opportunity to do that and look at this as, if you're impacted, know it's there. You don't need to worry. There's extra, support if you need it. But it is important, and it's important for all of us to try to keep up, because if we fall behind, it's only going to be more challenging for the student. And so, we do encourage timeliness, but as I stated previously, sometimes that is not going to happen, and that's okay. And that needs to be accepted and be okay.
Yeah. Oh, we actually, just kidding, I lied. We actually have more time than I thought we did. Are there any other questions that, oh.
I think there
is a question.
One. Yeah.
What advice and tips do you have for a new faculty member, from our Lansky? What tips do you have for new faculty members?
I would say ask the question.
Yeah, ask questions.
Ask the question. I'd say first, your faculty support and development associate is there to ask those questions too. So go to them first, and if they're unable to answer the question, they oftentimes reach out to us as well. This isn't just, we don't only support students, we support all of Ashford. And so if you have a question for us, you can ask, or if your faculty support and development associate does, they can ask, and just ask the question. Don't feel free, I think the hardest part is when you're fearful of asking the question and then we're doing something that is discriminatory toward the student with accommodations because we're fearful of asking the question. That's the last place we want to be. So ask the question, because probably you're not the only one who has it.
And communication with our students is really key. And there's I mean, there still needs to be boundaries set in regards to how you communicate and the response time with the students. But, you know, we oftentimes have, you know, especially students with, you know, different mental health concerns where there is that anxiety in regards to receiving responses and making sure they're wanting to do something wrong. So, you know, oftentimes we'll have our students, you know, they send them their authorized accommodation form at the beginning of the class, and there's some language of please confirm that you received this and if it's good to go. And, you know, and sometimes that confirmation is not always given back to the students. And so students are afraid that, oh, I can't use my accommodations, I never got the confirmation. And so they might go a couple of weeks through the class, you know, really struggling because there's that anxiety that they don't have accommodation because it was never confirmed. So just communicating that, you know, when there is questions in regards to the accommodations, that it's been received and that you're there to really work with them and to reach out, you know, if there are questions with their accommodations, that we find it helps a great deal with a lot of our students. Catherine Rosehammer asked about Canvas and the rate, and there's the late button in the grading. And so yes, we are aware that Canvas has a tool that automatically shows a late button that depicts when assignments are being turned in late. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to remove that, but late points aren't being taken off automatically. Yeah. So just because you see the late and you still have time left with accommodations, just know that, you know, the late points aren't automatically being deducted, and your instructor still has to go in and, you know, grade accordingly to the content of your work and keeping in mind the time frame of your extended time accommodation.
Can you speak to best practices for keeping track of our access and wellness students? Sometimes I find they get frustrated with zeros posts in the grade book prior to their due dates. You know, this is another common concern, I think, that all of us counselors have seen. And, you know, what I would say is maybe keep a note for yourself. I know with Canvas, it's kind of a learning curve for all of us. So it is taking time to adjust and finding best practices that work through the new system for, you know, students and faculty alike. So I think that, you know, instructors communicating out to students, letting them know, hey, I know you have these accommodations, this is my practice. Maybe giving them that from the start is really going to help to reduce some of those challenges that the students experience and that anxiety that might form because of that.
Yeah, and that just kind of goes back to the communication piece. So again, you know, we do want to thank you guys for joining with us today in regards to accessing accommodations. I shared my screen one more time that shows our contact information for the Office of Access and Wellness. Again, each student with accommodations has an assigned counselor whose contact information is on their form, but you can also reach our general office and email if you have questions or if a counselor is out of the office. So,
and one last thing, I just wanted to let you know, if you are a faculty and somebody has disclosed a documented disability or chronic medical condition, please email access@ashford.edu with that student's name, as much information as you have. The more information, the better. With their email address, their name and email address, we can normally locate them with those. So that's really helpful. And then any information you can provide. That will be housed in our office. You don't need to worry about you know, being as detailed as possible in that. So if they're disclosing anything to you, send an email that way. They'll get linked up to our office, or at least we'll know, or we'll send them to the counselor if they're already linked up to our office, that they might need some support from us.
All right, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.